Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
There comes a point in every long, dramatic off-season where the fog finally lifts and the picture sharpens. And when that moment arrives, it can feel both clarifying and unsettling at the same time. That moment may well be here for the Toronto Blue Jays, because after weeks of speculation, quiet hints, and half-spoken quotes, all signs are now pointing in one very clear direction. While most fans have been understandably fixated on Kyle Tucker and the Blue Jays' pursuit of a franchise-altering star, a series of new reports has quietly but decisively reframed the future of this team, particularly when it comes to Bo Bichette. And taken together, these updates tell a story that feels increasingly inevitable. The tension this off-season has been built on two parallel tracks. On one side, you have the excitement, the ambition, and the possibility wrapped up in Kyle Tucker, a player who could redefine the Blue Jays for the next decade. On the other, you have the emotional gravity of Bo Bichette, a homegrown star whose name has been synonymous with Toronto baseball for years. For a long time, it felt like the organization was trying to keep both paths open, leaving the door ajar just wide enough for either future to walk through. But with each new report, that door seems to be closing on one path while swinging open on the other. At the Blue Jays report, it's impossible to ignore the shift in tone from some of the most reliable voices in the sport. Mitch Bannon was one of the first to hint at this changing landscape, noting that following the signing of Kazuma Okamoto, a reunion with Bichette was appearing increasingly unlikely. On its own, that might have felt speculative. Insiders often hedge. Language can be soft. But this wasn't an isolated comment, and that's what makes it significant. As the hours passed and more reports surfaced, the picture became harder to dismiss. Ken Rosenthal weighed in with his own assessment, suggesting that Ernie Clement's playing time would only truly be squeezed if the Blue Jays re-signed Bichette, a scenario Rosenthal himself believes is becoming less likely by the day. When respected insiders begin independently arriving at the same conclusion, it stops feeling like noise and starts feeling like direction. What's particularly telling is the timing. These reports didn't emerge in a vacuum. They followed the Okamoto press conference, a moment that subtly but unmistakably signaled a philosophical shift. For much of the off-season, the Blue Jays appeared to be exploring a world where they could land Tucker while still keeping Bichette in the fold, perhaps through positional creativity or roster gymnastics. But as the dust settles around Okamoto's role, it's becoming clearer that Toronto's internal puzzle is being solved without Bo Bichette at the center of it. Ben Nicholson-Smith added another layer to this evolving narrative, pointing out that adding another prominent position player would likely require the Blue Jays to trade from their current depth, potentially moving pieces like Davis Schneider or Ernie Clement. While Schneider has long felt like the most likely trade candidate, the very fact that Clement's name enters these discussions underscores how tight the roster math has become. Every addition now carries consequences, and every consequence forces priorities into the open. Bob Nightingale's reporting may have been the most revealing in its bluntness. According to him, while the Blue Jays technically still have the door open for Bichette, the reality is that after 2 months of stalled progress and no extension agreement, a reunion appears more unlikely with each passing day. This isn't a negotiation drifting slowly. It's one running out of road. The Okamoto signing seems to have been the inflection point. Before that move, there were plausible scenarios where Bichette could return, perhaps shifting to second base, perhaps with Okamoto moving around the diamond or even into the outfield on occasion. But as roles crystallize, Okamoto is now widely expected to be Toronto's everyday third baseman. That single decision sends ripples through the entire roster. Clement's versatility becomes more valuable. Addison Barger's path becomes more complicated. And Bichette's fit, already complex, becomes even harder to justify without major concessions. This is where the conversation turns from sentiment to strategy. Bringing Bichette back would likely require him to embrace a permanent move to second base, something that has never been publicly confirmed as a certainty. It could also necessitate a significant trade, perhaps involving Anthony Santander and the remaining years on his deal, just to make the numbers and the innings align. Suddenly, what once felt like a natural reunion begins to look like a logistical maze. By contrast, Kyle Tucker's fit is almost effortlessly clean. A left-handed bat with elite defense in the outfield fills a current and future need without forcing the roster into knots. With George Springer approaching the twilight of his contract and Dalton Varsho edging closer to free agency, Tucker doesn't just address the present, he offers a bridge to the next era. He isn't a patch. He's a pillar. That distinction matters. Tucker represents continuity and evolution at the same time. A player who could grow alongside Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as the face of the franchise, redefining what the Blue Jays look like long after this current window closes. Bichette, for all his brilliance and history, now feels more like a beautiful complication than a clean solution. There is, of course, a caveat. Baseball off-seasons are fluid, and plans evolve. If Bichette were willing to consider a shorter-term deal with opt-outs, similar to the path Alex Bregman took, the equation could change. In that scenario, Toronto might find a way to keep him without sacrificing flexibility. But that requires alignment from both sides, and at this stage, it feels more theoretical than probable. Emotionally, this is a difficult reality to accept. Bichette has been a defining figure of the Blue Jays' recent resurgence. The image of him in October, launching that unforgettable 3-run home run in Game 7, is seared into the collective memory of the fanbase. For many, that moment felt like destiny knocking. The idea that it may stand as his final act in a Blue Jays uniform is bittersweet in the extreme. Yet baseball has always been ruthless in this way. Stories don't always end where they begin, and heroes don't always get tidy farewells. The fortunate part, if there is one, is that this crossroads doesn't signal retreat. It signals choice. Toronto isn't losing Bichette because they are shrinking. They are potentially moving on because they are aiming higher, broader, and longer term. While all this unfolds, the rest of the league isn't standing still. The Chicago Cubs' acquisition of Edward Cabrera from the Miami Marlins sent a jolt through the market, not because Toronto was involved, but because the New York Yankees reportedly were. Cabrera was a target for them, and missing out on him leaves another gap unfilled in the Bronx. In an AL East where margins are thin and timing is everything, every missed opportunity matters. So far, outside of Baltimore's move for Pete Alonso, the division has been relatively quiet. That silence creates opportunity. If the Blue Jays can strike decisively now, particularly with a move for Kyle Tucker, they have a chance to seize control of the narrative and the standings at the same time. Sometimes, the biggest advantage comes not from what you do, but from what your rivals fail to do. If you found yourself glued to these developments, make sure to like the video, share it with fellow fans, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report, because this off-season is far from over and the stakes are only rising. As we wait for the next shoe to drop, one truth feels unavoidable. Bo Bichette returning to Toronto is no longer the default outcome. It's becoming the exception. And while that may be painful for some, it also marks the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by clarity rather than uncertainty. Now the question turns to you. How do you feel about this shift? Would you accept Bichette's departure if it means securing Kyle Tucker and solidifying the future? And does that Game 7 home run feel like a goodbye or simply a pause in a longer story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because this is one decision that will echo through Toronto for years to come. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned, because the next update could change everything.